Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in this world. It's your host, Danny Haifong. And as you can see, I am joined by former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector, Scott Ritter. Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yes, yes. It's good to be back with you after your travels to Russia. Before we get to all of that, though, everyone, please do hit the like button. That helps boost this stream in the algorithm. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button and go to the video description to find all the ways you can support this channel. But let's get right to it, Scott. So first, there is breaking news coming out of West Asia, the Middle East. You may be aware that a U.S. base claiming the U.S. is in Jordan was struck, killing 3 U.S. troops and injuring dozens more. Now, the Jordanian government has said this is not in Jordan where this attack occurred. It was a drone strike on this base, but that actually it occurred in Syrian territory. Now, there's breaking news here where at any moment as we are speaking, the United States, uh, one second, I have this, here we go. So the United States, U.S. officials are actually preparing for a retaliatory action against so-called Iran-backed groups and or Iran, which could begin in the next few days, consisting of waves of strikes against a range of targets, including Iranian and Iran-backed forces in Iraq and Syria, as well as Iranian naval assets in the Persian Gulf. So, Scott, what's your impression of this? This feels like another major escalation in what seems to be a powder keg in the Middle East that the United States and, of course, Israel, which really started this whole thing, has ignited.
Well, first and foremost, let's start with the American facility that was struck by this drone. There. If you take a look at it, it's the Al Tanf facility, Area 55. I think they call it. It's an expanse of desert in Syria along the Syrian border with Jordan. The main facility is in Syria proper, and it's where the United States, together with some of their NATO or European allies, I think right now there might be a Norwegian presence there. They provide a training and assist mission to forces that we claim that what we're doing there is anti-ISIS, that we're taking on the Islamic State, but actually what we're doing is aligning ourselves with tribes in the region that used to be affiliated with the Islamic State, and we're using these forces as part of our effort to destabilize the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. We're there illegally. The Syrian government hasn't invited us into Syria as they have, for instance, the Russians or the Iranians. We're there illegally. We don't even have a legal authorization from the United States Congress to be there. We're just sort of there in this mission. And we have several hundred American troops there. The vast majority of them are at this base in El Tanf. Right across the border, there's a number of facilities. There's a UN school that's out of business, but we've taken it over. We use it for logistics. And there's a place called Tower 22, where, again, we have some logistics things. We are claiming that the drone struck Tower 22, which would mean that it struck inside Jordanian territory. The Jordanian government saying, no, drone didn't strike inside Jordanian territory. It struck inside Syrian territory, where the vast majority of these American troops are. The fact that we continue to overemphasize that this was in Jordan just underscores how much we're lying, and how much we don't want to admit that we have an illegal presence inside Syria. That is impossible to just. So let's just start right off that the drone that struck this base struck American soldiers who are illegally on the ground in Syria, carrying out a mission that has nothing to do with countering ISIS and everything to do with this decades long fantasy we have that somehow we can undermine and destabilize the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The base was struck as part of an ongoing effort by pro-Iranian militias, both in Syria and in Iraq, to punish the United States for its continued support of Israel and the ongoing genocide that Israel is perpetrating against the Palestinian people. And this is important because this strike didn't just happen out of the blue. There's been scores of attacks of this nature that have been unfolding for weeks, and American troops have been wounded in these attacks. And why do I bring that up? Because the United States right now is struggling, saying, okay, what are we going to do? Why hadn't we already planned that out? I mean, we have American troops on the ground in a region that are being attacked. The key thing about deterrence is that if you want to deter somebody from doing something, you don't develop your deterrence strategy after they've done that which you're trying to deter. If you don't want them to attack you, if you don't want them to create a situation where they kill 3 American service members, wound 34 others, I think the number's up to 40 now, then they have to know what the price is that they will pay for doing this. But what we've been doing is, they strike us, then we strike them, a little target here. They strike us, we strike them. We're not deterring, we're reactive in nature. And so now we have a situation where we're trying to develop a deterrent strategy, a deterrent, an operation of deterrence after the fact. We haven't deterred anything. They hit us. They killed 3 Americans. They wounded 40 others. Now, we shouldn't have been there. The tragedy here is that these soldiers, I think they're reservists from Georgia involved in engineering, they should not have been there. It's a tragedy that they died, but what the heck did we expect was going to happen? And we knew that they were attacking us. We knew that there was this potential. So now what are we doing? We're trying to come up with a deterrent to prevent future attacks by doing what? By expanding the conflict so that Iran is dragged into this. This is stupid beyond belief. The Iranians will not be deterred from anything. The Iranians have said we had nothing. They had nothing to do with this attack. Well, maybe they didn't order the attack, but I think that the drone that was used to strike the base was an Iranian-made drone that was provided to these forces. Wait a minute, America. Are you trying to tell me that if a nation provides weapons to a third party and that third party attacks you, that they're a party to the conflict? Wow, what's that say about what we're doing in Ukraine? But that's a whole different story altogether. The point is, we're going to do what? Strike Iran. What did the Iranian Navy have to do with this strike at Al Tanf? Not a damn thing. So if we hit an Iranian naval target, we're expanding the war. And the Iranians will say, you've attacked us, and now we'll have a general war. And if you think what happened in Al Tanf was bad, wait till the Iranians start dragging. Remember when they hit the al-Assad base with their ballistic missiles, the precise nature of those attacks. If the Iranians unleash their precision-guided missiles on American facilities in the region, we won't have 3 dead. We won't have 30 dead. We won't have 300 dead. We could have 3,000 dead. For what? For what? Because we want to look tough? This is the trap that the Biden administration has created for itself. We're not going to win. We're not deterring anything. All we're doing is escalating the conflict. And the only person that's happy right now is Benjamin Netanyahu, because this is what he has wanted from day one, since he first testified to the United States Congress back in the 1990s, when he said that the United States needs to strike Iran. Well, guess what? Benjamin Netanyahu is getting his wish. If we do what the news reports claim that we're getting ready to do, there will be a general war between the United States and Iran, a war that we're not prepared to fight, we're not equipped to fight, and a war that we will definitely lose.
Yeah, yeah. Talk more about the this losing to Iran aspect, because it feels like since October 7th, 8th, 9th, especially after Israel's assault in Gaza, everything the United States has done up until this point has been to escalate this regional situation. And it seems like there's so many focal points and multiple points of just this powder keg that many are talking about, where it's just one location after another in the Middle East. There are these resistance forces, there are axis of resistance that are in open revolt to what Israel is doing, and of course, what the United States is doing to support Israel. But you have Bolton, Lindsey Graham's of the world, all advocating for a war with Iran. And you have the Biden administration, while claiming not to want a wider war and sending Blinken everywhere around the Middle East to supposedly stop this, everything the United States is doing policy-wise, especially militarily, seems to uh, uh, be on the opposite track. So, why then, if the U.S. isn't in a position to fight this war, would they go for it? Is it truly that Israel is that influential over U.S. military policy, or is there something bigger?
It's a combination of the two. I mean, definitely Israel is, I mean, let's just be honest. Israel doesn't make U.S. military policy. I mean, they influence America's policy posture in the Middle East. But the idea that Israel somehow picks up the phone and says, bomb this, bomb that, is absurd in the extreme. The United States makes military policy. And here's the problem: we still believe that we are the power that we were back when the Cold War ended, when the Soviet Union collapsed and we emerged from that decades long Cold War conflict as the sole remaining superpower on the face of the earth, where American military power meant something because it was unmatched. Nobody could match us. So um, we could deter people by threatening the use of American military force. Then we had the 2 decade long global war on terror, where we got trapped in this conflict in the Middle East and in Southwest Asia, low intensity conflict that dominated every aspect of our military, from recruiting to the equipment that we were purchasing to our training. Our entire focus was on Iraq, on Afghanistan, on countering Al Qaeda. We forgot the basics. We stopped doing large scale ground combat. We stopped training for it. And we forgot how to fight a real war. We stopped funding it. We stopped preparing for it. Meanwhile, the world is still spinning around, doing what it does. The world's watching the United States, observing what we're doing, how we operate. We were trapped with legacy mindsets. And what I mean by that is, World War II era type thinking, carrier battle groups. Yay, we got an aircraft carrier. It costs us billions of dollars. We put airplanes on it and we sail it to the coast of some country, and the airplanes take off and we bomb the crap out of them. Except people now look at it and say, well, what if we build some missiles that can sink that aircraft carrier before those airplanes come in range of our shore? And they've been doing it. Area denial weapons. The aircraft carrier is outdated right now. We are in danger of losing the Dwight D. Eisenhower or the Carl Vinson if we dare sail that into the region, because the Iranians will sink it. They will absolutely sink an aircraft carrier. This is the reality. We can't deter people as long as the threat remains sort of mysterious. We don't know what America can do. We're a little afraid of what America can do. So we're not going to do anything to get the American beast unhappy with us. But today, everybody's like, well, we know exactly what America can do. They fire some cruise missiles, they drop some bombs, and that's it. That's it. We can't do anything. We can nuke them, but we're not going to do that. So, the Iranians are like, guys, we'll shut down the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the Houthi have shut down the Red Sea. the Bab el Mandeb. I finally said it right. And they've they've shut it down. Israel, the port of Elayat has no ships in it. The Suez Canal has a precipitous drop in usage. Europe is suffering because of the billions of dollars it's costing to divert shipping around the Horn of Africa because they can't go through the Suez Canal because they can't go. And that's the Houthi that are doing it with relatively primitive weapons. The Iranians will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Europe will become strangled. America will become strangled. Our economies will collapse. And if they push it too far, then the Iranians will just shut down oil production throughout the Middle East. And there's not a damn thing we can do to stop it. And all those fancy aircraft we have, I mean, they don't just appear out of anywhere, Danny. It's not like, it's not a computer game where they go, oh, tap, 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 F-22s magically appear over Iraq and drop bombs, tap, 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 ooh, and then nothing. No, they take off from a base. That base is Al Ubaid base in Qatar. It's right there. You know where it is? Right smack in the middle of the Persian Gulf. And you know who has missiles that can blow the living crap out of it anytime they want? The Iranians. And you know who doesn't have enough air defense to protect it? The Americans. We'll lose that base. So all the planes that we think we're going to be using to carry out this fancy air campaign against Iran will be destroyed. Nobody's thinking. There's no one home in the White House. We don't have the military capacity to deter squat. And if we think we want to stand up fight with the Iranians who have spent the last 30 years watching us operate in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, let me give you just a pro hint on what war with Iran is going to be like. Two little short stories. One, Israel, our proxy, 2006. The Israelis had a commando. They have a commando force, Sariyat Matkal. It's their elite Delta Force type unit. I pounded my head a little too hard on that one, and it's stinging. But they're launching an attack on a village against Hezbollah, who are trained by the Iranians, who have Iranian assistance. The Israelis are using frequency hopping encrypted radios provided by the United States. It's almost impossible to intercept the stuff. And even if you intercept it, by the time you decrypt it and get the read, it's too late. It's really good tactical stuff. So they're communicate. Meanwhile, the Iranians are on the other side. And guess what they did? Yeah, they broke into the frequency operating radios, and they synced it and they decrypted it real time. And they have a linguist trained in Hebrew who can mimic voices. So they're able to break into the Sariyat Matkal radio net, mimic the attack commands, and force this unit to attack prematurely, walk into an ambush where they are almost wiped out. That's what the Iranians did. We can't do that. They did it, and they gave it to Hezbollah, 2006. They've gotten so much better since then. The United States had a drone they called the Beast of Kandahar, the giant B-2 looking stealth drone, and it was taken off from Kandahar. It flew that mission over Abbottabad in Pakistan, provided, remember that famous photo of the White House all staring at the screen during the SEAL raid against Osama bin Laden? That's the drone footage coming from the Beast of Kandahar that's hovering over there, and it's flying around. The Iranians parked people outside of Kandahar, and they just sat there and intercepted signals. Okay, so the Beast of Kandahar is taking off. Let's intercept the ground control signal. When it gets up to a certain level, it passes off to a satellite where somebody in the United States is controlling it. Let's intercept that. Let's decrypt that, and let's build mechanisms so it takes off. And then the Iranians, when it says we're going to pass over to America, the Iran goes, no, we're going to intercept you. They took control of the Beast of Kandahar, flew it into Western Iraq, and landed it, and they captured it and all that. The Iranians are really, really good at what they do. They've been studying how we fight for decades. They have been preparing to fight this war. They have been doing what we should have been doing. Remember when I said if you're going to have deterrence, that means you have a plan. That means the moment that drone hits the tent, you blow the living crap out of the enemy. They don't even get a chance to think. There's no news, nothing. It happens. And then they wake up and go, what the hell happened? We don't ever want that to happen again. That's called deterrence. The Iranians are ready to deter the living crap out of America because we're going to do something stupid. And there's going to be an instantaneous response that's going to beat the living snot out of us, and we're not ready for it. Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton and all these other idiot senators like, hit Iran, hit Iran, hit Iran. Why don't they just say, kill Americans, kill Americans, kill them? Because that's what's going to happen. Yeah, we're going to kill a lot of Iranians if there's a war. We're going to destroy a lot of stuff. We got good military equipment. We're not totally incompetent, but we can't win the war. We're good at blowing things up, but we're not good at winning wars. And we can't sustain this. We don't have the military capacity to sustain a campaign against Iran. Iran has the capacity to sustain a campaign against, hell, the Houthi are kicking our butts. The Houthi. And we want to go up against the Iranians. How stupid can you be?
Well, speaking of the Houthis and Ansar Allah, there have been reports of a U.S. naval ship being targeted. The United States is denying it. But this comes as you were, I believe you were in Russia for much of this time as things were escalating in the Red Sea. Ansar Allah has made it very clear that none of the airstrikes that the United States and the UK, really in the lead of this, have dropped on Yemen are going to have any effect on this blockade. What have you made of what Ansar Allah is doing and the Houthis, what they're doing with regard to the Red Sea? And where is this going to go to? Because as you were talking about Iran and and what just happened at Al Tanf base and this possibility of escalation, well, also there are reports that possibly U.S. troops are in Yemen, supposedly fighting terrorism, but also there's this operation, a military operation to defeat and destroy the Houthis and Ansar Allah. So it feels like it's another war, and it's in this one the United States is already not winning. So that feels to me pretty significant.
Yeah. First of all, again, we have some special operations forces in the area that have been doing, anti-Al Qaeda operations. A lot of people don't realize that Al Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula is well entrenched in Yemen, and we support them. I know. Al Qaeda attacked us on 9/11, but we don't talk about that anymore. We're the allies of Al Qaeda. We support them in Syria, in Idlib, and we support them in Yemen now to take on the Houthi. And we have special operation forces that are there. It's not going to win a war. I mean, with all due respect to Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, they have very, very limited capabilities. They can go in, they can pop a high value target, they can go in and do certain cool stuff, but they can't fight a war. They're not a war fighting force. They live in air conditioned facilities where they lift weights and they eat protein and they get big and they get strong and they run, and then they get into a helicopter and they fly and they run out and they kill some people, grab some people, come back to their air conditioned facility. That ain't war. War is living in a trench day after day after day, grinding it out. The Houthi know how to do war. They've been doing war for a long time. They've been doing war not just against American trained and equipped Saudi ground forces, United Arab Emirates ground forces, the mercenaries that the United Arab Emirates bring in, and beating all of these people. They've been taking on the air force of the Saudis, the F-15s and the advanced fighter aircraft with all the intelligence that the United States provides, all the bombs that we give them. It's basically America with Saudi pilots. And they've been beating them. During the Gulf War, the thing that I was most heavily involved during the Gulf War in 1991 was counter scout operations, trying to find so-called mobile relocatable targets. That's a missile launcher with a missile on it. You know how many we killed? We flew thousands of sorties. We brought Delta Force in. The British brought the Special Air Service in. We had all the sexy people out there doing their sexy stuff because we're America. We're great. We eat and we lift weights and we go out there. We didn't kill any. None. Zero. They're tough to get. The Saudis aren't very good at striking them because they're tough to get. So the Houthi are very good at launching drones, launching missiles with satellites looking for them, with intelligence assets looking for them, trying to target them and not getting them. And suddenly America comes in, and I had to laugh the moment I saw it. America struck, a dozen Houthi missiles. They were out on their ramps getting ready to fire. I'm like, wow, So the Houthi forgot how to fight a war all of a sudden. Overnight, the Houthi forgot all the lessons that they had with the Saudi, and they just make a rookie error. Let's bring out our missiles and let's just line them up so that the satellite can see them. And then we will leave them there for a couple hours while the sortie is generated on the aircraft carrier and they launch and they come in and, let them bomb us because we forgot how to fight. Or the Houthi went, here's a decoy, and let's let the Americans drop all their bombs on the crap that doesn't matter. Meanwhile, we're off doing our thing. The Houthi, they're very good at what they do. They've been fighting the Saudis since 2014 and winning. We haven't brought any new skill set to this game, and we've fallen for some basic rookie mistakes. We're blowing up decoys. We're throwing away expensive military assets, firing, bombs that cost $100,000, missiles that cost millions against a decoy that cost $1,500. This is just stupidity in the extreme. The Houthi they control the pace of operations. Yeah, I don't know if most Americans know it, but we fought a major naval battle against the Houthi, I think last week, and we lost. Now, we didn't lose any ships, but see, naval warfare isn't necessarily about sinking ships. It's about accomplishing things like protecting a strategic sea line of communication, guaranteeing passage of ships and things. And so we went in there and we built a screen, air defense screen of destroyers that were supposed to prevent all missiles from coming in. And then 2 American flag container ships were going to run the gauntlet, protected by this screen, and they're running the gauntlet, and the Houthis went, oh, no, boom, 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 fire, fire, fire. Yeah, they got things shot down, but one penetrated, landed 100 meters short of the container ships, and they went, and they turned around and fled. Now, if the mission that you're trying to accomplish was to get 2 container ships to run the gauntlet to get through the Houthi, terrorized waters so that they could get to Israel, but they had to turn back, that means you failed. That means you lost. That means America planned a military operation, a naval operation, and the Houthi beat us. This is the reality of what's going on right now. We're not in control of this situation. There's not a damn thing we can do to prevent this. We can't go to war against Yemen. We don't have the military resources to do this. We can launch a couple, commando attacks until we lose a helicopter. It goes down. Then we try to bring in the Osprey with the combat search and rescue team. It comes in. It goes down. Now we have 30 Americans trapped on the ground. So we bring in more resources. We get trapped there. I mean, this is what's going to happen. This is stupidity in the extreme. And the question is why. All of this could be undone if we just picked up the phone and told Netanyahu, cease and desist. You're done in Gaza. You're done. Finished. We're not going to give you any more weapons. We're not going to do anything. You're finished. And as soon as that happens, it's done. It's finished. The Houthis stop. Shipping goes. The economies of the world are healed. But instead, we're just doubling down on stupid, tripling down on stupid. I mean, this is ridiculous what's going on.
Yes, and speaking on tripling down, as this is going on, not only is the United States not stopping what Israel is doing, but even as there is supposedly a temporary ceasefire agreement on the way, it hasn't been finalized just yet between Hamas and Israel. There has been intelligence that Hezbollah has said that they've received that Israel is actually preparing for a larger scale military operation, a war with Lebanon, which now, if we follow our conversation, we talked about Al Tanif base being struck and the U.S. possibly dragging themselves into a war with Iran. We're talking about Yemen in the United States, in the UK, and the Operation Prosperity, whatever the hell it is. Dragging themselves into a war with Yemen. And now we're talking about Israel. The suspicion is that they're preparing for a larger military operation against Lebanon, against Hezbollah. And even Israeli media had to admit that if that were to occur within 24 to 48 hours, there might be 1,000 missiles raining hellfire on Tel Aviv. So, I mean, talk about this this contradiction here of this ceasefire, supposedly this temporary ceasefire, supposedly going to affect soon, while at the same time Israel is supposedly preparing for war with Lebanon.
Well, let's get down to just basics here. Um, Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet said early on that they were going to destroy Hamas politically, eliminate it as a political entity, and destroy it militarily, meaning that they will never again be able to repeat October 7th. What's happening today? Even the most, you know, analysis that's most favorable to Israel says that 80% of the Hamas tunnel network still exists. It's there. Israel hasn't touched it. They got 20%. I think Israel got less than 20% because I think that Israel tends to exaggerate what it's done. And they don't know what the Hamas tunnel network is. I mean, to sit there and say, well, we got 20%, that means you know where they are. And if you knew where they are, then you'd get 100%. You don't know anything about the Hamas tunnel network. So it's a guess. And I think 20% is just like giving Israel more credit than they actually deserve. Hamas fought Israel to a standstill. It was never about Hamas's ability to control the territory above ground. Hamas was never designed to fight Israel toe to toe above ground. It was about Hamas's ability to fight the war Hamas wanted to fight, which is to lure the Israelis in to ambushes that Hamas would control and have timing of. And Hamas had fought them to a standstill, and the Israelis have been beat. That's why they're withdrawing. That's why the Israelis are starting to pull their battalions out. This is a huge political problem for Benjamin Netanyahu because he's failed. First of all, Hamas politically, if there was an election today in the Palestinian territories, Hamas would win the election. Mahmoud Abbas would and Fatah and the PLA, they would be swept away. 70-80% of the Palestinians would vote for Hamas, not just in Gaza, but everywhere, because they're the only Palestinian entity that's standing up for the Palestinian state, to fighting for the Palestinian people. And the people now recognize it. Yes, the Palestinians in Gaza have suffered tremendously. It's genocide. I mean, it's not me saying that. The International Court of Justice says, yeah, it looks like genocide to us. Looks like a duck, talks like a quacks like a duck, walks like it's a duck. It's genocide. And the Palestinian people understand the price that they've had to pay for this. But it's a price they're willing to pay if at the end they get what they've been denied for over 75 years, a state, a homeland, a place of their own, without Israeli control, without Israeli domination. And so, the idea that the Palestinian people would turn their backs on Hamas because Hamas actually fighting for the future of Palestine is absurd. So politically, Israel's lost. Not only that, but around the world is rallying around the cause of the Palestinian people, which is now the cause of Hamas. They don't have to say it. The people in the streets aren't saying we're pro-Hamas, but they're in the streets only because of Hamas. Remember, none of this would be happening if Hamas didn't launch the October 7th attack. They did, and they've triggered this series of events, which they predicted. This is what they wanted to happen because it's the only pathway to get to a Palestinian state. So Israel's lost politically and militarily. Hamas has won. Hamas beat them in a stand-up fight. I mean, Israel went into places, Khan Yunis, they went into other places. They can't take it because Hamas said, you shall not pass. And the price the Israelis were paying was too high, and they had to pull out. So now Netanyahu could say, oh gosh, we got beat again. Because remember, Netanyahu's the guy that gave them October 7th. And so he's already in a hole. And his only hope was to have this huge victory in Gaza where he wiped Hamas off the face of the earth. Didn't happen. Hamas has won. Hamas beat Israel. Let me say it again. Hamas beat Israel. So now Netanyahu's going, how do I remain relevant? Why don't we go kick the bigger hornet's nest? I mean, there's a movie, Mark Wahlberg was in the movie. He's about a boxer. I can't remember the name of the movie, but I remember one line where they're trying to set him up for a fight, and some dude, they said, yeah, he's been on the couch. He's been on the couch. You can take him, even though this guy's bigger. And he got it, the guy's huge, and he's stacked, and he beats the living snot out of Wahlberg. Well, guess what's happening now? Hamas is the guy that beat the crap out of Wahlberg. Now, the Israel, Wahlberg wants to take on Mike Tyson at his prime because that's Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been training for this fight since 2006. Hezbollah made a decision. I think there's been a lot of talk about the mowing of the grass, there's that suburb in Beirut, you're getting me in a bad moment here, Danny, because I'm a little tired, but Dahia or something of that nature. But it's a suburb that was bombed into oblivion by the Israelis as part of their collective punishment approach. And the Israelis took that and said that's how we're going to deter people. Well, you know what? The Hezbollah looked at that and said, if we're going to fight Israel again, we're not going to let them bring the fight to us. If there's going to be a big conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Lebanon, that war is going to be fought on Israeli territory. And so if Israel's sitting here saying, we're going to drive to the Litani River. I mean, they've tried that several times. Has never worked. Israel's lost 3 wars now in recent history because Hamas just beat them. I mean, that's the reality. Nobody's running around saying that. I'm just telling you straight up right now. Hamas beat Israel in a stand-up fight. Boom. Defeat Israel, victory Hamas. But prior to that, you had Hezbollah beating Israel when they evicted Israel from southern Lebanon. And then you had Hezbollah beat Israel in 2006 in a stand-up fight. So Hezbollah, who's 2-0 against Israel, undefeated, is sitting there saying, we're not going to let them bring the fight to us. We're going to bring the fight to them. So Hezbollah has all these tunnels that have been dug under the thing. And when the war comes, they're going to pop up. They have brigades specially trained for this task. They will take over northern Israel to the Galilee Sea. They will cut off the Golan Heights. That's the plan. And there's nothing Israel can do to stop it. So the Israelis are sitting here planning for one fight. Another fight's going to happen that they're not prepared to handle. And just imagine if you're a reserve Israeli battalion who just got the snot handed to them, kicked out of them in Gaza. And now you've been pulled out and you get a couple days leave. You get to go drink your Gold Star beer and hang around with your women. And now you go back to the front. You're a little fatter and out of shape still. And now you're going to go in and teach those Lebanese a lesson, those Hezbollah guys a lesson. And you're going across the border and you're making some progress. You get 100 yards here, 100 yards there. And all of a sudden, there's 10,000 Hezbollah fighters behind you. And you're trapped. What's going to happen? You're going to die. You're going to die. This is going to get ugly really fast. And Hezbollah's missiles are far more capable, far more accurate. They can defeat any Israeli air defense system out there. And so, again, Israeli airplanes have to take off from a base. That base won't exist anymore. Israeli command and control operates from facilities that have been historically untouchable by its enemies. They'll be blown up. There won't be any command and control. There won't be any communication connectivity. And these fat little Israeli reservists are going to be, skewered and barbecued by Hezbollah. It's going to get ugly really fast. This is the reality. Hezbollah is going to wipe Israel off the map. If that's what Israel wants, that's the fight that's going to happen. They're going to lose northern Israel. And when they lose northern Israel, they're never getting it back. I mean, that's the other thing they need to understand. So why is Israel doing this? And believe me, Danny, if I know this, the Israeli military knows this. Hell, you're reading about this in the Israeli military. Newspapers. They know it. Haaretz knows what's going to happen. Everybody knows what's going to happen. So why are they allowing it to happen? Because Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't care about Israel. He only cares about Bibi Netanyahu. He only cares about his little cabal of extreme right-wing, Zionists who just the other day, I couldn't believe it. There was they had a gathering where they were talking about the development of Gaza in a post-conflict scenario where they're going to build homes and develop, and they're all holding arms, dancing and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey guys, you just got beat. You lost Gaza. It ain't yours. You're done. And I hope that they're dancing when Hezbollah shows up. I'd like to see Hezbollah surround that facility. I'd like to see Hezbollah capture these people. I'd like to see Hezbollah bring these people to justice, because nobody else will. The International Criminal Court won't. Israel's been found to be engaged in genocide, or at least practices that a reasonable person could call genocide. And the world's ignoring it. Hezbollah will bring justice to Israel. And, Israel only brought it upon themselves. I mean, I don't wish harm on any. I can't say that. I do wish harm on these Zionists, especially these far right wing lunatics. But I don't want innocent people to suffer. And there will be innocent people who will suffer. I mean, we've already seen 2 million Palestinians suffer in Gaza. Millions of Israelis are going to suffer now, but they only have one person to blame. That's Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, and there seems to be a good amount of politics involved here, both on the U.S. and the Israeli side. All of these multiple fronts of war in the Middle East, whether we're talking about Gaza, or we're talking about Yemen, or we're talking about what happened at Al Tanif in Syria, and what that means for war against Iran. How much of this then is you said I think you're saying is that Bibi Netanyahu is in a kind of a war for self-preservation. How much of this also is Biden's attempt to harness some kind of political capital out of war, which for me seems to be outrageous and just kind of out of left field almost, given that all of what we have just talked about points to a complete and utter lack of success, which is kind of required if you're going to use war as political capital, or at least should be required if we're talking about rational thinkers. But what's your take?
Look, if there's a master plan by the Biden administration, let's back up just a second here. The Biden administration was taken by surprise on October 7th, just like Israel was. Prior to October 7th, the Biden administration, when they came in, they gave lip service to, a two-state solution. They came in and said, we believe in a two-state solution. We want, they told Benjamin Netanyahu, shame on you. You can't do those settlements. But they didn't do anything to stop it. What they did do is to buy into the master plan of the Abrams Accord, that is the 2020 agreement brokered by the Trump administration that would seek to normalize Israel in the Arab world. That basically you bypass the whole Palestinian problem. You go straight into Israel, becoming a good neighbor to Saudi Arabia, to Bahrain, to the United Arab Emirates, and everybody's working together, and peace and prosperity is going to break out because the economy is going to be so good. We had that moment last fall where Joe Biden was in, I think, India for the G20 summit, and he held this press conference, and he talked about let me get this right, the Middle East economic corridor. There's the India Middle East economic corridor. But the idea is that, India would be able to put containers on a ship and then ship it to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, where they'd be offloaded, and they'd get on a train in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, and there'd be rail connectivity between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And then we'd go on through Jordan. Wow, this is really cool. And then into Israel. Imagine that, a train that connected the United Arab Emirates through Saudi Arabia and Jordan into Israel to a port called Haifa. And then they would take those containers, put them on a ship, and they would go to Greece. And you'd have this wonderful connectivity, and everybody's going to be rich. The economy's working, baby. And Benjamin Netanyahu, when he got up to the United Nations General Assembly, instead of showing the cartoon bomb about how close Iran is to the nuclear weapon, instead he talked about the same thing. This is the new face of the world. Israel is one of the world. We are one of you. We are just like you. We are peaceful. We are economic. That's everything that was supposed to happen. That was the Biden thinking. There was no strategy for a war against Iran or to deter Hezbollah. We weren't thinking that. We were off playing this other game. Meanwhile, Hamas went, wrong, October 7th, and the whole world. And we've been reacting ever since. So we don't have a strategy. Danny, to deter someone, let me just educate people real quick. Um, Military operations on a large scale are complicated things, and wars aren't won, you know, on the battlefield. I mean, I know we talk about boots on the ground, airplanes dropping bombs, and all that, but none of that happens without logistics. Logistics is the key. And the thing about logistics is it takes a long time to prepare for power projection halfway around the world. If we're going to do something, again, the first Gulf War, Desert Storm, there's something called the tip fiddle. Now, that's a fancy term. It may have changed because I've been out of the military for a while, but it is basically it's a phased introduction of logistics equipment. So if we're going to take 700,000 American troops from the United States or from Germany, and we're going to move them to the Middle East to fight a war, we have to flow that equipment in there. We have to marry up the troops with the equipment at the ports or at the airfields. And you have to phase it in so that you don't have all the troops land at once, but no equipment's there, or all the equipment jam into the ports and everything can't handle. It has to be phased in properly. It has to be planned. This takes a lot of planning. All the ammunition has to be considered. What you're doing, ammunition, fuel, everything, bandages, bullets, food, all this has to be thought out in advance. We started planning the Gulf War in October. We began flowing equipment in there for the fight that ended up happening in January. Massive military operational planning. None of that existed, Danny, prior to October 7th. Everything we're doing right now, we're making it up. We don't have the planning, the means. We don't have any notion of large scale combat in the Middle East anymore. We forgot how to do that. Hell, we were getting out of there. Remember, we got out of the Middle East so we could go to Europe, and then we're supposed to stabilize Europe so we go to the Pacific. Then Ukraine came and we went, what the hell? So now we can't go to the Pacific. We're stuck in Europe. And then the Middle East blows up again. We go, damn, we can't go in the Middle East because we're all in Europe anymore. We don't have enough troops to do anything. We can't supply. We will run out of ammunition. We will run out of cruise missiles. We will run out of surface to air missiles. We will run out of everything. Bombs. Do you think we just have an infinite supply of bombs? We just gave all our damn bombs to Israel. And Israel dropped all those damn bombs on Gaza and lost. And now we want to have a fight, not only with the Houthi, but now we want to expand it to Iran. Remember, Iran's huge. That means lots of targets that need lots of bombs to drop on them, lots of bombs that have to be dropped by airplanes that consume a lot of fuel. Where's the fuel coming from, Danny? They haven't planned it out. They need ships full of aviation fuel flowing to the region that don't exist anymore. We haven't thought any of this out. This is the reality of what's happening right now. We're making it up as we go along. We somehow think that we're going to deter Iran through a 3 to 5 day bombing campaign. No, we need a 3 to 5 year bombing campaign if we're going to deter Iran, and we just don't have the resources to do it. We don't have any artillery ammunition because we gave it all to Ukraine, but we lied because apparently we had a lot of artillery ammunition that we could turn around and give to the Israelis. And the Ukrainians are going, wait a minute. You told us you didn't have anything, and now you just gave it all the Israelis. But now we really don't have anything because it's all done. It's finished. We are literally, the emperor has no clothes, Danny. The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, it's naked, and it's what's so fascinating about all of this is with all of these limited capabilities, there is still yet trillions of unaccounted for dollars going into the U.S. military. I know you read about this. Where does it go? We don't know, but certainly it's going to their so-called stated aims. But I wanted to transition, if we could, to Ukraine, because I know you were just in Russia. I know you have limited time today as well, so I want to respect your time. While you were in Russia, there were some interesting things going on. One of them was a so-called stated strategy change by the United States, where now there's a de-emphasis on Ukraine taking back territory, maybe an epiphany or simply just a pathetic admission of defeat. But nonetheless, as this was happening, you were everywhere. It seemed like in Russia, you were in Russia, you were in New Russia, the Donbass territories have been newly admitted. Um, could you talk about what you learned about this war, about the conflict through your trip to Russia, and how it kind of jives or maybe doesn't jive with what we are hearing about it from the collective West, the media, the military industrial complex, etc.?
Sure. Look, this trip was a follow-on to the visit that I had in May, which was a 26-day, 12-city tour of Russia. And one of the, I guess the purposes of that trip was for me to reintroduce myself to Russia, or have Russia reintroduced to me, because I hadn't been in that region since the Cold War. I mean, I last set foot in, you know, Soviet territory in 1991, when it was still the Soviet Union. And so here we are now, 2023, and I'm returning. And I'm aware, I'm a student of Russia. I study its history, I study its culture, but book knowledge and seeing it, two totally different things. So I went there, and I had this wonderful experience where I captured, the essence of Russian. I've been trying to bring it back, encapsulate it, and try and educate an American audience about the reality of Russia. So this trip had two purposes. One, if you're going to talk about Russia and you ain't talking about snow, then you ain't talking about Russia. So I need to see this new Russia in wintertime. And it's not just about the cold and the snow. It's about two of the most important times culturally for Russia. One is New Year's. We celebrate Christmas on December 25th here in the West, and it's a big holiday with the Christmas tree and the gifts and all that stuff. Well, the Russians don't celebrate December 25th as Christmas. That's us. The Orthodox celebrated it, and I think this year they celebrated on the 7th of January. And it's a different thing. Christmas for them is a very religious thing. It's about the Mass. It's about Jesus being born. It's about, it's very religious, and the rise of the Orthodox faith in Russia. So I got to see New Year's, which is their Christmas. That's their family time. That's where they give the gifts. And to see Moscow lit up, see St. Petersburg lit up for New Year's and for their Orthodox Christmas is just an amazing thing. And to see the Russian people as they share this experience with themselves, with their neighbors, as a nation. This was really a cultural thing for me. I got to go to St. Petersburg on Christmas Day and go to the ballet, one of their major theaters there, and see the Nutcracker, Peter Tchaikovsky's Christmas ballet, see it performed live in St. Petersburg on Christmas Day. Now, why that's important? Because in 1892, Tchaikovsky premiered the Nutcracker in St. Petersburg on Christmas Day. I mean, this wasn't just sort of cool for me, but it touched. You see how cultural the Russians are. I mean, they love this stuff. This is them. This defines them. This is their music, their dance, their composer. This is their soul. This is their essence. And you see that. I got to go to the big church in Moscow on Christmas Eve and see the mass that was hosted by Kirill, the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox. He's the damn Pope of Russia. All right. This is big deal. And to see him come in and see the pageantry and see how the Russians, how seriously they take faith today in Russia. So that was the first part of it, was completing the task, I guess, connecting more dots about what the Russian soul is, what Russia is, the importance of orthodoxy to Russia, and to see the Russian people come alive, and to see this at a time when Russia's in conflict with Ukraine, and the collective West, Russia's under sanctions, and to see how unbowed and undefeated Russia is as a nation, as a people, was also important. There was no celebrations in the street about defeating Ukraine and all this. There was steely-eyed determination that they are going to see this through. I went to the VDNH. It's a economic exhibition, and I guess in April, I might be getting this wrong. In October, November, they opened up this exhibition where every major district in Russia got a stage, and they basically were selling themselves, saying this is what we do economically, and they built this huge thing, and you can go in there and you walk through, and man, for a nation that's under sanctions, they got a lot of economic stuff going on. I mean, it's thriving. It's all modern. It's all AI driven. Very impressive. So you see that. You see this thriving economy. You see this vibrant society. You see this deeply cultural people, and it had to be experienced. And I'm so glad that my host Alexander Zuryanov gave that opportunity, not just for me, but for my daughter. I was able to bring Patricia back in May. I brought Victoria. I have twin daughters. Victoria got to see Russia in May. Patricia got to see it in December. But then there was part two, and this is the part that I wanted to be, because when I was there last time in May, I didn't go to the new territories. There was a number of reasons for that. One, it was dangerous, and they just weren't going to let me go there. And two, it was still, I guess, a little too raw, etc. But I came back in May and I started talking. I talked to you. I talked to other people, and I'm supposed to be thick-skinned and everything, but I always hear what people say. And some of the criticism was, hey, you're talking an awful lot about what's going on the front and about what's going on in Donetsk and Lugansk and Zaporizhia and Kherson, but you've never been there. I mean, you're sort of like a long-distance sniper, aren't you? A little armchair warrior, sitting back and just, talking about things that and people are calling you an expert, but you've never been there. And I'm like, I mean, that hit home. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I haven't been there. And if I'm going to talk about it, maybe I should go there. Maybe I should see it firsthand. So I wanted to go there, and I made it a point to want to go. Now, here's the thing. Just because Scott wants to go someplace doesn't mean Scott gets to go someplace. Because, it is dangerous. There is a war going on. And the Russians were like, we don't want you to go there. We sort of like you. We'd like you to continue doing what you're doing. We don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it, but we like what you're doing. And if you go there, you might die. And that's not going to be a good day. So no, you don't get to go. And so there was an interesting give and take there as I was trying to make my way to the new territories, where the Russian government was saying that ain't going to happen. But there were people that understood why it was important for me to go there. And we found the way to make it happen. And it was done, I guess we'll call it, through the indirect approach. We started my trip to the new territories in Grozny, in Chechnya. Why? Well, there's a couple reasons why. One, if you want to talk about Russia, this is a conflict of, about Russia. And what defines Russia? How do you define Russia? Most people say, well, when you say Russia, you're thinking blonde hair, blue-eyed, Slav, Russians. Well, the Chechens are Russians. They consider themselves Russians. They're part of the Russian Federation. They're part of the family of nations that makes up the Russian Federation. The Chechens, Muslims, separate ethnic identity, language, religion, but they're Russian. And they're fanatically Russian. They are supplying troops to the fight. Some of the senior military leaders, Abdi Alduanov is in the Lugansk area. He's a general. He's now at the General Staff College, taking the lessons he learned from the conflict and capturing it so it can be better transmitted to other troops. So I went to Chechnya, and I had to see, because again, we talk about conflict resolution. How does this war end? Are the Russians ever going to be able to repair relationships with the Ukrainians? And today people say, no, can't do it. Too much blood. Well, I'll tell you what, if you think there was too much blood in Ukraine, go to Chechnya and understand there were two wars fought between the Chechens and the Russians in the 1990s and in the early 2000s. Chechnya is a very small country, 1.5 million people. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives. and and this got bloody. This got ridiculous. This was, the in America, we talk about the Hatfields and the McCoys, those clans in the Tennessee, Kentucky area, where, you kill a Hatfield kills a McCoy, then the McCoy has to kill a Hatfield, and the feud went on for decades. Well, the Chechens are like that, blood feud, but they take it to an extreme level. And the Chechens were starting to consume themselves in this conflict. And there were Chechens who fought against the Russians, got their freedom. People, I don't think a lot of people realize that the Chechens actually became independent, the Ichkeria Republic. They fought for their independence and they got their independence against the Russians in the 1990s. But then the United States started infiltrating Wahhabists, foreign fighters with this, perverse Saudi Arabian, fanatic Islam coming in there. And the Chechens aren't Wahhabists. They're Sunni Sufists. I learned that. Why? Because in this tour, I was taken to the Shali Mosque that was built as to be the heart of Islam in Chechnya. This is where the Sunni faith, the Sufist theocracies were based, where they lived, where they breathed. I was the Grand Mufti, the head Islamic dude, took me around and explained everything to me, talked to me about religion, the importance of religion in the Chechen people and the Chechen nation. This is Islam in a nation, a republic that calls itself Russian. Russians and Chechens live side by side in peace and harmony today. A miracle has taken place. They took me to the museum of Ahmed Kadyrov. Ahmed Kadyrov was the Grand Mufti of the Ichkeria Republic. He fought against the Russians. He's the head Islamic guy in Chechnya. And when the second Chechen conflict starts up, he's against the Russians. He's organizing it. But then he started to see the perversion of Islam that was taking place with the Wahhabists coming in. And he said, this is going to destroy us. It's going to cause Chechens to turn on Chechens, and we'll get this blood feud going, and it will never end, and we're all going to die. And we need to bring this to an end. Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, is the president, and he's looking at the fight, and he said, we can't allow the United States, the CIA, to rip Chechnya away from us, but we need this to end too. We need this war to end. So Putin and Ahmed Kadyrov got together, and they came up with a peace formula. It was a formula that was premised on respect, Russian respect of the Chechens, respect of their autonomy, respect of their religion, respect of their traditions, their values, their customs. In exchange for this respect, the Chechens, said, we can forgive everything that's happened. We're going to move on a pathway to peace. Grozny in 2002 looked like Stalingrad, totally flattened. Grozny today, modern city. I have to tell you, when you drive into Grozny at night for the first time, if you haven't experienced it, you think you're driving into Las Vegas because of the lights. The city is alive. High-rise lights, colored lights, beautiful city, beautiful roads, and a people at peace, a people at peace. The Chechen miracle has to be experienced if you're going to understand what's going to happen with Ukraine, because that's how the Russians operate. Forget all this Western propaganda. The Russians only want to do this, that, and that. The Russians want peace. The Russians want people to live in peace. And the Russians will, at some point in time, repair relations with Ukrainians or the Ukrainians or whatever's left. And once they do that, people will thrive, people will prosper. That's the Chechen miracle. The other thing we had to do is shake the ship a little bit. And here we were given a big assist by Ramzan Kadyrov. He is the head of the Chechen Republic. By law, senior officials in the Russian Federation are not allowed to meet with foreigners without 2 weeks advance notice. Well, we didn't have 2 weeks advance notice. I just showed up in Chechnya. And I didn't know I was going to get a meeting with Ramzan Kadyrov, but suddenly the word came in, you're meeting with Ramzan Kadyrov. Okay, cool. Come on, man. He's the head of the Chechen Republic. It's sort of a big deal to have a meaningful dialogue. I crack up. There's people like, You met with a terrorist leader. You met with a man under sanctions. Who the hell are you to meet with this guy? I'm like, well, I just explained to you guys the importance of the Chechen miracle. And Ramzan Kadyrov is the living embodiment of the Chechen miracle today. You can say what you want. I know there's people out there. Is the Chechen policy towards homosexuals everything America would like it to be? Nope, because they don't have a policy towards homosexuals. They don't tolerate it. Now, is this an American value? No, it's not. It's a Chechen value. And one of the reasons why there's peace in Chechnya today is because Russia said, we will respect your faith. We will respect your culture, your traditions. And homosexuality is not a Chechen tradition. And, it is what it is. They don't do LGBTQ. That's not part of their society. As an American, I'm like, well, in America, we couldn't tolerate this, but it's not America. It's Chechnya. It's their place. And you have to see it. You have to live it. You have to breathe it. You have to be there to understand it. To go to a restaurant in a village that was the center of the Russian-Chechen conflict, where hundreds of Russians were killed, thousands of Chechens were killed, and to go there and sit down and watch families come together in peace and harmony. You have to understand that only happens because the Chechen cultural values were respected by the Russians. Peace has broken out all over. It's not, I guess, the way that Americans would want to design it, but then we wouldn't have peace. American doesn't bring peace. We bring conflict. We tear societies apart. We set people off against each other. What's happening in Chechnya today is peace. It's peace. And I was thrilled to have the opportunity to sit down and talk to substantive dialogue with the man who is the head of the Chechen Republic, the man who plays an important part in what's going on. Now, Ramzan Kadyrov is sort of a legendary character. He's sort of a man's man, like all the Chechens are. I mean, say what you want about the Chechens, they got this manly thing going on. So when I get out of the car and I'm walking up to the villa in the presidential palace where we're going to have the lunch, there's this guy in the distance. I wear glasses and my prescription's off a little bit, so it's a little blurry. But all I see is this giant white wolf. I mean, I'm talking about a giant white wolf. If you watch Game of Thrones, the big wolf that they kill on season 1. I forget what they call it. It was not a werewolf, but it was some sort of big giant wolf. This thing is that big, and there's this guy feeding it. Jumping up, the wolf's jumping up and he's feeding it and he's petting it. And all of a sudden there's a couple Chechen warriors holding the wolf back. And I'm like, damn it. They sucked me in here. They're going to feed me to a wolf. So I walk up there and it's Ramzan Kadyrov playing with his pet wolf. Little intimidating. You got to be honest. And then you walk in and gracious host, we have a table set up and we have this long conversation. And it's substantive. We're talking about, peace in the region. We're talking about his father, the role his father played, what the Chechen policy is towards Ukraine, towards supporting Russia. My daughter, who is a specialist in Southern Caucasus affairs, was able to talk to him about, a pathway to peace in Georgia. Good stuff. And then halfway through, and I got to tell you, as we drove in through Grozny, a normal city street, cars, driving around. Nothing. So we're sitting there eating about an hour in. He goes, hey, would you like to say hi to the troops? I'm like, all right. Now, when I was there in May, they took me to the presidential barracks, and there were 2,000 Chechen presidential guards out there, and I got to go in and meet them. I didn't address them, but I shook the hands of the battalion commanders, sort of walked, like inspected the troops. It was a cool experience. So I'm like, yeah, hell, why not? I'll do that. He goes, all right. We go out the back door, and as soon as the door opens up, I go, there's something wrong here, because there's nothing but soldiers all over the place. And it's a limited view. You come out, and you've got some trees and stuff, but all I can see is soldiers. I'm like, okay, I guess this is where I meet the troops. Nope, we keep walking. We make the turn, and now you get into the rolling grounds of the palace, covered with soldiers, thousands of them. 25,000 of them to be exact. Somehow, while we were eating lunch, he pushed the magic button and the garrison of Grozny mobilized. And they literally walked through the streets of Grozny. Imagine being a citizen of Grozny and you're trying to drive to work, and all of a sudden 25,000 soldiers just start converging on the presidential palace, and they are armed to the teeth. They are carrying RPGs, machine guns. They got it all. And they come in and they're there. And we go there and they part like Moses parting the Red Sea. And we walk through them. And it's like, I'm just sitting there going, this is so unreal. I mean, I'm like pinching myself. Why is this happening? This is, you can't even explain what's going through my mind, because it was just like crazy. And then we get up there to the presidential palace area, and you look out, and it's literally a sea of soldiers. A sea. They're everywhere. And Ramzan Kadyrov gives a speech. And I'm like, okay, cool. He's addressing the troops. And then he turns around and he goes, and now I'm inviting Scott Ritter to come up and speak to you. And I'm going, no, you're not. I don't know what to say. I don't know what and my friend Alexander Zuryanov, his fiance, he proposed to her on New Year's Eve. That's another reason why New Year's Eve was cool. I was there when he proposed to her. She said yes. But now we're getting ready to ruin their relationship, because they say she's going to be my translator. And so we're walking up the stage, and she's like saying, her mouth is saying, just speak in short sentences. But her eyes are saying, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, I like Alexander. He's a good friend of mine, and I want them to have a great relationship. I'm not going to ruin this. So I'm stepping on the microphone and I go, I'm a Marine. Go big or go home, baby. So I walk up to that microphone and I just start speaking Russian. And I have no clue what I'm going to say. I just start speaking Russian. And next thing I know, I put together a semi-coherent speech. And I addressed 25,000 heavily armed Chechens in the middle of Grozny. It was the craziest thing in my life. But by having that meeting in this event, we put a marker on the table that said, we will not be denied. And so we got permission later on to drive down to the new territories. But as we entered the checkpoint, if you have to drive, it's a long drive, a couple thousand kilometers. And you get down to Rostov-on-Don, and then you make a right, and you're heading to Donetsk. And there's a checkpoint. And we get to the checkpoint, checkmate. The Russian Ministry of Defense said, nah, you ain't going in. You don't get to go in. And we're like, okay. But we had plan B. And plan B was, we're going to the Crimea. Now, they tried to checkmate on that one. The head of the, I'm not going to get into interior politics there, but somebody told us that we can't go into Crimea, but we got permission from Crimea to go into Crimea. So we went across the Crimea bridge and got in there. And then we did the second thing. I got an interview with the head of the Crimea Republic. A big deal. Again, need 2 weeks advance notice? Nope. Sat down, substantive discussion where we talked about the new territories. We talked about Crimea. We talked about everything. It was captured on film, broadcast on TV. I did an interview in a major Crimean news network where I talked about my desire to go to the new territories and how important it was for me to see the new territories. And next thing you know, we got the green light. So we went in. We drove in. It's a war zone. It's clear it's a war zone. We had bodyguards. The Ukrainians are out to kill me. I'm not exaggerating this. They really do want to bring me harm. And that's why they didn't want me to go to the new territories. They're like, we sort of like you alive. We don't want you dead. But I got there. I got to meet the governor of Kherson, have a substantive dialogue with him about not just the conflict. That's a military thing, about Kherson and the future of Kherson, and how in the midst of this war, they're actually focused on rebuilding the territories, about bringing up the quality of life for the people who live in Kherson today, about the investments that are coming in. The number one plant they have right now is a concrete production plant, and they're building multiple lines. Why? Because they need to pour a lot of concrete to rebuild this place, to bring it up to standards. The roads have been redone. The roads in the new territories are very modern, very smooth. A lot of military transportation taking place. We went from Kherson to Zaporizhia. Got to see, Melitopol, the city that The Ukrainians said they were going to capture to sever the land bridge. They ain't going to break it. And then on to Mariupol, and that was quite the experience. Mariupol's in Donetsk, People's Republic. The siege of Mariupol, the fight with Azov Brigade. This was literally a Nazi bastion, a center of power, and they fought hard, and the city was destroyed, nearly leveled. But when you drive into Mariupol from the south, all you see is new construction. Giant apartment blocks put up, a giant gleaming hospital, all up and running. Everything's going great, and they're building. And you see they're repairing the buildings that can be repaired, but so many of the buildings can't be repaired. They've been gutted and destroyed, and there's so much left to be done. Which is why the concrete manufacturing plants are so important, because to do all this, you need to pour concrete. And the Russians are thinking about the future. The Russians are thinking about rebuilding. So, it isn't just building military factories. It isn't just building military infrastructure. They're building civilian infrastructure to make life better for the citizens of Donetsk. When you see Azovstal and the ruins of it, you understand the ferocity of the fighting and the price that everybody paid to do this. Then it's on to Donetsk. One thing that I can say about Donetsk is, again, I had 5 military units that I wanted to visit, and we actually had made preparations. We had the connectivity, and I was going to get as close as I could to what they call the red line, the line of contact. I wasn't going to the front lines. Don't worry, I'm not a war tourist. But I wanted to meet these soldiers and talk to them and get a feel for the battle firsthand. They weren't going to let me anywhere near the red line, so only one of those meetings took place, and that was because they brought the person to me as opposed to letting me get there. Plus, they wanted me to get the hell out of there. The Ukrainians are tracking everything. If my phone had to be off and in a Faraday cage so that they couldn't track me. They know my phone number. You don't stay in a hotel. I don't stay in a hotel in Donetsk. I stayed in the safe house, and you didn't know the safe house until the last minute, and then you'd show up there. And everything's on the clock. Anytime you do something, you're on the clock, you're timing it, and you're displacing, because you can't stay in the same place for any length of time, because if they did get a track on you, a HIMARS comes in and is going to kill you. So we're moving and moving. The meeting with Denis Pushilin was the same thing. He's the head of the Donetsk People's Republic. He wanted to meet. But to meet, we were driving through Donetsk, getting a phone call, go here, get a phone call, go there. And eventually, we end up in a place where we can meet. But while we're meeting, we're on the clock. And at some point in time, their guys come and go, meeting's over, everybody's gone out of there. That's the reality of life in Donetsk. It's a city under attack. As we speak, the Ukrainians are shelling it. They're not killing military guys, they're slaughtering civilians. You can read about the sound of artillery fire. But when you wake up in the morning in Donetsk and you hear it, and it's loud and it's close, and the people are going, that's ours, that's theirs. And as you drive through, you see the mother taking her child to school or taking her to wherever they're going, and the artillery fire, and they're not flinching. They're not flinching. Why? Because it's part of their daily reality. This is what you have to see. But you also have to meet these people and look in their eyes and feel the grip of their hand to realize these are Russians. I know everybody's like, oh, these are occupied territories, and they want to. The people that live there are Russians, and they will forever be Russian, and they only want to be Russian. Their only regret is it took Putin 8 years too long to make the decision to go in. They wanted him to come in 2014. Too many people have died in their point of view, but they are all Russian. And that's the importance of seeing this, of going through there, is to come up with the realization that, anybody who thinks that somehow Ukraine will be able to take these territories back over is wrong. These are Russian territories populated by Russian people. And I can speak about this with very firm conviction today because I went to the new territories, because I saw it firsthand, because I experienced it for myself. So I'm eternally grateful for everybody in Russia who made this possible, even the people I might have pissed off. I apologize for pissing you off, but it was very important for me to see this, and I thank them all for allowing it to happen.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it seems like the trip of a lifetime, but hopefully there are more visits coming up, because I think it's important work to operate as a real ambassador of peace with Russia. I mean, there are few things that are of more importance right now with regard to the world situation. And perhaps before we go, Scott, if you could just maybe in a minute or 5 minutes, just describe what you learned from the people, the Russian people in New Russia, and about the conflict itself. We talk a lot about how Russia is in the driver's seat, Ukraine has lost. How did you experience that? Was that something that you experienced when you were on this trip in the new Russian territories?
One of the reasons why I wanted to go to the news territories is that I was, like I said, I was criticized, attacked, or whatever for being overly optimistic. People are like, Scott, you're making these predictions, but on the ground here in Donetsk, it's much worse than you think it is. Da 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 da. And so I wanted to, go there myself and see it. It's bad. It's really bad. It's a war, and it's a war that's taken a huge toll on Russia. Um, the idea that Russia, is that this is a cakewalk is absurd. I've never said it was a cakewalk, but to talk with these soldiers and understand the price that they've paid and the price that they are paying to bring this conflict to an end. The Russians have paid and are paying a horrible price, a horrible price. I talked to a unit fighting the battle, and I'll try to say this right. It's the Battle of Avdiivka. I'm pretty sure I butchered that too, but it's the big battle taking place near the city of Donetsk right now. Heavily fortified place, just fighting positions everywhere. In October, they launched an attack that started the breakthrough. 3,000 dead. 3,000 dead. And I'm like, wow, you guys got your asses kicked. He's like, no. We killed 20,000 of them. And that's the fact, is that, the kill ratio back then was 7-1. Today, same guy saying it's 20-1 now. For every one of our guys that dead, we're killing 20 of them. It's an absolute massacre. Doesn't mean that they're still not taking casualties. Of course they are. The Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight. But I don't see panic. I don't see concern. I don't see anything other than steely-eyed determination to get this job done. And what does it mean, get the job done? Because there was a while there where people were saying, you still hear it in the West, this is a stalemate. We're fighting to a standstill. This is going to be the new Korea. No, not from the Russian perspective. Every governor I met, and I met 4, said the same thing. This ends not only with all of the territories of the 4 new territories, under Russian control. That means all of Kherson, including the right bank, all of Zaporizhia, all of Donetsk, all of Lugansk. But it's probably going to end with, every single one of them said Odessa will be Russia. It's just going to happen. It can't. They've threatened the security of Crimea. Russia can never allow Ukraine to control that. If you take Odessa, you got to take Mykolaiv. If you take Mykolaiv, you got to take Dnipropetrovsk, and you got to take Kharkov. And they're all saying, yep. So Ukraine's going to lose at a minimum 4 additional territories before this is done. But even then, they're just like, no, we're not going to Ukraine will no longer exist. This is the reality. Ukraine has created a monster. And that monster is a Russia united in the desire to achieve victory over this Nazi regime in Kiev, this Zelensky regime that's controlled by Banderists, and there's no debate about it. Zelensky now, everywhere he goes and he poses, there's a Ukrainian flag, and then there's the red and black flag of the right sector of Azov, of the Nazis. This is a Nazi regime. It will cease to exist. The head of the Russian intelligence service the other day, just yesterday, said, yeah, when this ends, Ukraine will no longer exist. They have basically condemned themselves to non-existence. The Ukrainian state, as you know it today, will not exist. This is everybody saying that. This This is their mindset. This is their determination. So this Western propaganda about the Russians looking for peace and a negotiated settlement and all this stuff, that ain't reflected in the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is that everybody is committed to this path to victory. But the important thing to realize is that the victory for them isn't defined by destruction. Victory for them is defined by redemption and resurrection. Again, the Chechen miracle. It wasn't about destroying Grozny that gave the Russians victory in Chechnya. It was about the rebirth of Grozny that gave the Chechens and the Russians victory together. And what I was left with was a deep appreciation for the commitment of the Russian people and their leadership to bring this conflict to an end in a way that will allow Russians and Ukrainians to peacefully coexist as Russians and Chechens do today.
Well, Scott, I know you need to get some rest. So I say we maybe close up now. I think that's everything that you said about your trip. We'll definitely have to reconnect about it in the future because I know that you probably have many more things to say about it. Even what you said about the Russians being scared for you, not wanting to put you in harm's way. When I wanted to actually go back to China during the Belt and Road Forum, and the handlers that took me to China this last time were scared for me to go to China because they were like, well, the US hates the Belt and Road Initiative, so we don't want to get you in trouble. I'm just like, what? No, don't think about that. I don't want don't think about me getting in trouble. I want to go. But nonetheless, I think that that sentiment is not just beautiful, but also everything you were able to do is really, I mean, it probably will shock many who hear this, but at the same time, it's so important to meet Kadyrov and to go across the new Russian territories. What an experience, and we'll have to talk more about it, Scott. But where can people support you? I know this is part of the Waging Peace campaign, so I'm actually going to put that in the description now or I'll put Scott Ritter Extra in the description now, and then talk about that because I know this, and then we can head out of here.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that grew out of the May visit is that I'm going to try and capture the experience of Russia in two forms. One is a documentary film. The title is Waging Peace, and then an accompanying book similarly entitled. And again, the idea is to find a vehicle to capture this experience that best allows me to communicate it to a broader audience. And so it's the Waging Peace Project, and people can support it a number of ways, and they can support the ongoing work. It's a lot of work. You know this, Danny. And it doesn't happen by itself. It just takes time, it takes effort, and it takes money. If you go to scottritterextra.com, it's a website, and it's a one-stop shop. Doesn't cost you anything. There's no paywall. All my articles are published there. All my podcasts are put there. But I have a Substack, and people who want to support, you can subscribe for free. I've made it a policy not to put anything behind a paywall at this juncture, because the goal here is to make Maverick bark on cue.
Maverick saw Kadyrov's wolf, I think.
Yeah, Maverick's like, wait a minute, I'm a wolf. Why aren't you feeding me like Kadyrov fed his white wolf? But no, the thing is, you can subscribe to the Substack channel. There's a monthly subscription, an annual subscription, and believe me, every subscription helps because it allows this to happen, allows the sustainment of this. So that can do it. And you can also donate to the Waging Peace Project. We are making good progress. I guess I can say it. We had a strategic decision to make about the movie. Do we make a documentary that goes into theaters? You might remember that I made a documentary film in Shifting Sands about the lead up to the Iraq War. and weapons of mass destruction. Very good film. But we built that, we designed that, produced it to be a film that was released in theaters. But when you think about it, there's a lot of effort. It's cool. I mean, I understand. I learned a lot about documentary films and documentary film festivals, etc. But at the end of the day, you're going through a whole bunch of effort to get a few thousand people to be able to see this movie. Today, with the way the internet works, I think we're going to build a internet-based movie, different production. It's still going to be high quality, but it's going to be focused on being shown online as opposed to in theater, and then millions of people can see the film. So, we made that decision. We've got a whole bunch of material that we're using. We've got some great people supporting, and so we're going to be starting to make really good progress on the film and on the book. But again, none of it happens for free, unfortunately, in this day and age. So if people want to help with that project, you can go and you can donate through the wagingpeace.fund tab on the ScottRitterExtra.com.
Great. Yes. ScottRitterExtra.com is now in the video description, so you can all head there. Also in the video description are all the places you can support this channel: Patreon, Substack, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, and more. Thank you to everyone viewing.
Can I just say this? What I just said about my need for funding, Danny has that same need, and everybody who does this right now, the revolution in information warfare, I guess, is what we have to call it, is real. But it only, we're going up against mainstream media outlets that are heavily funded by deep pockets, billions of dollars, and we're kicking their ass. Danny Dhaiphong's kicking their ass. I'd like to believe that on occasion I kick their ass too, and we do it, pennies to their dollars. But we need those pennies, and so fund the revolution, people. That's what this is. This is a revolution in information, how societies gain access to information, and what Danny's doing is invaluable. So support Danny Dhaiphong. I do, and you should too.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, Scott. All of the links are in the description to support Scott, to support myself. We will be back with all of you soon. Have a good evening. Thanks to all the viewers, and of course, thanks to all the moderators for supporting the chat tonight. Take care, good night, and have a good one. Bye-bye.